next phase. I knew that philanthropy had been a part of my life as a basketball player, and it was going to be a part of my life as a businessman. The reason I was going into business was to give myself another platform to be able to impact the community.
This is David Robinson, widely known as the Admiral, a legend who dominated the NBA with his exceptional athleticism and leadership. A two-time NBA champion, 10-time All-Star, and one of the most complete players to ever lace them up. But beneath the accolades, the double-doubles, and the blocked shots was a humble giant whose admiration for others elevated his legend. So, let's explore the 6 basketball players David Robinson admired the most, what made their relationship special, and why they mattered so much to him. But before proceeding, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. And like this video, this will mean the world to us. Thanks. Sean Elliott, the unshakable partner. While Robinson was the face of the Spurs and the anchor of their defense, Sean was the unshakable glue that helped make everything work. Their partnership wasn't just effective, it was vital. He complemented Robinson's presence in the paint with his versatile offensive game, smooth shooting, and knack for showing up in big moments. But his path to becoming a Spurs legend wasn't as smooth as it might seem. Born in Tucson, Arizona, Sean had basketball in his blood from an early age. At the University of Arizona, he honed his skills, eventually winning college basketball's highest honor, the John Wooden Award, in 1989. His excellence in college led to the Spurs drafting him 3rd overall that same year. But stepping into the NBA wasn't easy, even for someone as talented as Sean. Like Robinson, he had to find his place on the Spurs, a team that was still defining its identity in the league. Fortunately, he found his role early, making clutch shots, playing reliable defense, and forming an instant connection with Robinson. From the moment they stepped on the floor together, it was clear that Robinson and Sean were a perfect fit. His dominance in the paint and Sean's ability to stretch the floor as a sharpshooter gave the Spurs an edge in an era defined by big men. Sean worked tirelessly to balance being Robinson's wingman while also emerging as a key player in his own right. And perhaps the greatest single moment of his career came during the 1999 NBA playoffs, a pivotal time in Spurs history. On May 31st, 1999, during the Western Conference Finals against the Portland Trail Blazers, Elliott etched his name into basketball lore with what would forever be known as the Memorial Day Miracle. Late in the game, with the Spurs trailing and their championship hopes on the line, Sean hit an impossible off-balance three-pointer from the corner to put San Antonio ahead. His heel was just from the out-of-bounds line, and yet, with Robinson and the entire team holding their breath, he delivered. And it was the turning point for the Spurs, eventually leading them to their first ever NBA championship. After the game, Robinson reflected on the impact of the shot, calling it the kind of moment you never forget. It gave us all the belief that nobody could stop us. But what made his legacy even more incredible was the perseverance he showed through immense personal challenges. Fans who admired his brilliance often didn't realize what he was enduring behind the scenes. In 1993, he was traded to the Detroit Pistons in a move meant to shake up the Spurs. It was a tough transition for him, being away from his longtime teammates, particularly Robinson, who he described as more than a teammate, a brother on the court. However, Sean returned to San Antonio the very next year after an underwhelming stint in Detroit, immediately resuming his role as Robinson's right-hand man. Things seemed to be back on track, but then Sean's health began to decline. He was diagnosed with a severe kidney disorder, something he chose to keep private for much of his career. It wasn't until after the 1999 championship that Sean revealed he had undergone a kidney transplant from his brother, Noel, and despite the gravity of the situation, he pushed himself to return to the court less than a year later, becoming the first NBA player to make a comeback after a kidney transplant. His ability to overcome adversity and remain a crucial part of the Spurs' rise to prominence only deepened Robinson's admiration for him. Sean was more than just a teammate, Robinson said in an interview. He was someone who inspired me, not just with what he could do on the court, but with the way he approached life. Their bond extended beyond basketball, rooted in mutual respect and shared struggles. Together, they laid the groundwork for San Antonio's transformation into a perennial powerhouse. And while Tim Duncan would eventually join the team and take San Antonio to even greater heights, it was Sean and Robinson who built the foundation. He knew his role better than anyone. He wasn't the star of the team, but he didn't need to be. His ability to rise to the occasion when it mattered most made him indispensable. A perfect example of this came during the Spurs championship run in 1999. Sean averaged nearly 12 points per game in the playoffs, providing consistent scoring options alongside Robinson, all while dealing with a condition that could have ended most players' careers. For Robinson, Elliott was more than a player who made shots. He was a partner who made history. His legacy may not include gaudy stats or MVP awards, but it's written in the hearts of Spurs fans and in the history of one of the NBA's most respected franchises. But hold on, everything we have covered about Sean Elliott wasn't as intense as it was with this player. In fact, his leadership was undeniable on the court. Avery Johnson, the heart of the team, a player who defied the odds, thrived on determination, and earned his place among the greats by sheer force of will. If Robinson was the cornerstone of the Spurs during the 1990s, Avery was unquestionably the heartbeat of the team. Nicknamed the Little General, Avery wasn't a prototypical NBA star, but what he lacked in size and raw athleticism, he made up for with leadership and an unwavering work ethic. Throughout his career, Avery's attitude and resilience turned heads, especially of those who doubted he belonged in the league. To truly appreciate his role in transforming the Spurs into championship contenders, you have to go back to the beginning and understand the uphill battle he faced just to make it to the NBA. Avery's basketball journey didn't follow a conventional path, and despite having a standout college career at Southern University, leading the NCAA in assists 2 years in a row, he went undrafted in 1988. At just 5'10" and with limited scoring ability, teams doubted he could succeed in the league. But if there's one thing that defined his career, it was his refusal to give up. He signed with the Seattle Supersonics as a free agent that same year, and though his time there was short-lived, it marked the beginning of a career that would be built on grit and determination. Unlike today, where undrafted gems can carve out significant careers, the late 80s and early 90s NBA was far less forgiving. Avery bounced around between the Sonics, Denver Nuggets, and Houston Rockets before eventually landing with the San Antonio Spurs in 1991 for what would become his first of multiple stints with the team. And even then, his role wasn't guaranteed. He was still battling for minutes, trying to prove he could lead at the highest level. Avery was waived multiple times during his early years, only to fight his way back onto rosters. His persistence caught the eyes of San Antonio's coaching staff, and over time, they realized Avery brought something unique to the table, an uncanny ability to lead, inspire, and win the trust of his teammates. His court vision and basketball IQ made him a natural floor general, and his refusal to let adversity define him set the tone for those around him. Robinson, the Spurs' superstar big man, was one of the first to see his extraordinary value. Robinson referred to him as the pulse of our team, explaining that his leadership was what kept the Spurs cohesive in both good times and bad. And though his numbers often flew under the radar, Avery's impact on the court was undeniable. He wasn't an elite scorer or a flashy player, but his unrelenting focus on being the connective tissue of the Spurs system made him invaluable. Avery orchestrated the offense, delivered pinpoint passes, and ran the pick and roll with precise timing. He embodied selflessness, always putting the needs of the team ahead of his own. To Robinson and head coach Greg Popovich, this wasn't just a role, it was the foundation of championship basketball. For Avery, every single possession was personal. He wanted his teammates to succeed, and he pushed them to be better every step of the way. Avery could light up a room with his energy, Robinson would later say. He just had this way of making you believe things would work out, even when the odds were against us. And as the Spurs began climbing toward championship contention in the late 90s, his voice became louder, his leadership more essential than ever. The team may have had Robinson anchoring the paint and emerging star Tim Duncan coming into his own, but he was the engine that kept those gears turning. The 1998-99 season, shortened by a lockout, was a pivotal one for San Antonio. With Avery having cemented himself as the team's starting point guard, the Spurs finally put together the pieces necessary to make a deep playoff run, and Johnson was ready to rise to the occasion. And the 1999 NBA Finals would forever etch Avery his name into basketball history. Going up against the New York Knicks, the Spurs had the chance to win their first ever championship. Game 5 of the Finals was one for the books, a tightly contested battle that came down to the wire. With just under 50 seconds left on the clock, and the Spurs clinging to a 1-point lead, he found himself with the ball in his hands, wide open on the baseline. It was a moment the undersized, undrafted kid from Southern University had dreamed of his entire life. Without hesitation, he rose up and sank the 18-foot jumper, giving the Spurs a 3-point lead that would ultimately secure the franchise's first title. His teammates mobbed him in celebration, knowing that the little general had once again delivered when it mattered most. And for players like Robinson, Duncan, and the entire Spurs organization, Avery Johnson wasn't just the little general. He was the spirit of a team that refused to quit, paving the way for one of the most respected franchises in sports history. Now, we move on to one of the best center of his era. In fact, without his presence on the court, the New York Knicks would have suffered defensively. Patrick Ewing, the relentless rival. Ewing, the cornerstone of the New York Knicks, was known for his silky mid-range jumper, shot-blocking ability, and unrelenting work ethic. Robinson, famously dubbed the Admiral, brought versatility, speed, and jaw-dropping physicality as the anchor of the San Antonio Spurs. And while they shared mutual respect, their matchups were a showcase of competitive fire, with no room for niceties when the ball went up. Ewing earned Robinson's admiration not just through his stats, but also through the way he elevated everyone around him. Patrick was one of the toughest guys I ever faced, Robinson admitted. The tension between their teams, combined with their contrasting styles, created a rivalry that still resonates with fans decades later. And before Ewing entered the NBA, his story was already one of perseverance. Born in Jamaica, he moved to the U.S. as a child and quickly adapted to the American game. Despite being an outsider at first, Ewing became a high school sensation in Cambridge, Massachusetts, catching the attention of legendary college recruiters. He chose Georgetown University, where his career became the stuff of legend. Ewing led Georgetown to 3 NCAA championship games, winning 1 and establishing himself as one of the most dominant college centers ever. His defensive instincts, combined with an offensive finesse rarely seen in a 7-footer, made him the obvious first pick in the 1985 NBA draft. The New York Knicks happily drafted him as the key piece to revive their championship hopes, but his journey to NBA superstardom wasn't easy. Ewing carried high expectations on his shoulders from day one and faced constant scrutiny in the New York spotlight, and still, he attacked every game with the same energy that made him the heart of the Knicks for over a decade. And their rivalry blossomed as soon as Robinson entered the league in 1989 after a 2-year service commitment with the Navy. By that time, Ewing was already a seasoned veteran, determined to bring a title to New York, and both players were tasked with carrying their teams, but approached the game in different ways. Ewing was an offensive grinder, using his legendary mid-range jumper and back-to-the-basket game to outsmart defenders. Robinson, on the other hand, relied on his athleticism and quickness to glide past opponents. Fans often compared their games, pointing out their individual strengths in debates about which big man was truly better. And yet, beneath the outward competition, there existed great respect. And off the court, Robinson frequently acknowledged how much his consistency pushed him to improve. Patrick's work ethic elevated everyone, not just his teammates, but also players like me who had to face him, Robinson said in one interview. But when the whistle blew, all respect was left behind. Every time the Knicks and Spurs faced each other, the battles in the paint were nothing short of gladiatorial. Ewing and Robinson would clash on nearly every possession, each one determined to impose their will on the other. And for Ewing, going up against younger, more athletic players like Robinson was a test of mental toughness as much as physical ability. His speed and agility could sometimes make him a nightmare for a more traditional center like Ewing. But on the flip side, his expertly polished game and high basketball IQ meant he could frustrate Robinson in ways few others could. Their back-and-forth games were a chess match, and the results often hinged on subtle adjustments made in the heat of battle. Robinson once said, with Patrick, you couldn't relax for even a second. He always made you work. And while their NBA battles brought out their competitive fire, the dynamic between them shifted entirely during the 1992 Olympics as part of the Dream Team. Playing alongside each other instead of against each other allowed them to appreciate one another's greatness in a new way. The Dream Team experience wasn't just about dominating international competition. It was about bringing together some of the best players in history and watching them gel as a unit. And through the years, their battles served as a reminder of the golden age of centers in the NBA. Both players carried their teams through some of the NBA's most competitive seasons, often going head-to-head in games that felt more like heavyweight fights. Ewing won countless fans not just for his consistency, but for the fire he brought every time he stepped on the court. And while Robinson often walked away with the upper hand in their matchups, he never underestimated the challenge Ewing posed. For Robinson, playing against Ewing wasn't just about winning, it was about surviving. Patrick forced you to give your very best every single time, Robinson said. And for that reason, Ewing's career, marked by unrelenting effort and undeniable greatness, remains one of the benchmarks against which many big men after him are still measured. Tim Duncan, the perfect teammate, the San Antonio Spurs legend, whose quiet dominance and unparalleled consistency defined 2 decades in basketball. His journey to the NBA was deeply unique and shaped by trials, perseverance, and an unrelenting dedication to excellence. Duncan didn't pick up the game of basketball until his teenage years. Originally, he was a competitive swimmer, a promising talent in the Virgin Islands, until Hurricane Hugo destroyed the local pool. Forced to pivot, he began playing basketball and quickly displayed an incredible aptitude for the sport. It wasn't long before he was on his way to stardom. Duncan would then attend Wake Forest University, honoring a promise made to his late mother to get his college degree. He stayed all 4 years, mastering the fundamentals of the game under coach Dave Odom, and cemented himself as one of the most complete college players of all time. By the time he finished, Tim was a 2-time ACC Player of the Year and a 3-time NABC Defensive Player of the Year, making him a can't-miss prospect in the 1997 NBA Draft. And when he entered the league as the first overall pick, no one foresaw how perfect his connection with the Spurs and David Robinson would be. Tim quickly proved himself to be mature beyond his years, blending into an already solid system. Together with Robinson, he formed the Twin Towers, a front-court duo that overwhelmed opponents with a combination of size, skill, and fundamentally sound basketball. While many rookies struggled to adjust to the NBA game, Tim thrived from the start. He was immensely coachable, a testament to his intelligence and humility, which Robinson didn't take for granted. Tim had this incredible focus from day one. He made all of us better, Robinson would often say. His rookie campaign ended with him averaging 21.1 points, 11.9 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks per game, earning him Rookie of the Year honors and solidifying himself as the Spurs' franchise cornerstone. And what followed was one of the most dominant and consistent careers in NBA history. His reign with the Spurs lasted nearly 2 decades, and he never wavered in his approach. Known as the Big Fundamental, his game wasn't flashy, but it was very effective. His footwork and basketball IQ allowed him to dominate on both ends of the court. Opposing players and coaches alike admired his versatility. Whether he was knocking down bank shots, defending the rim, or orchestrating the Spurs' offense, Tim did it all with a calm demeanor that belied his competitive fire. Even as he racked up MVP awards, All-NBA honors, and Defensive Player accolades, he remained humble, always putting team success above personal glory. Robinson, who passed the torch to Duncan as the team's leader, praised his unselfish nature, saying, "I've been blessed to play with him." And perhaps one of the greatest moments in his career came in the twilight of Robinson's. As he prepared to retire at the end of the 2002-03 season, he and Duncan led the Spurs to their second NBA championship. It was a poetic end to his storied career and a pivotal moment in Duncan's journey, signaling the start of a dynasty. Duncan was at the peak of his powers during that finals run, averaging 24.7 points per game. In the decisive Game 6 against the New Jersey Nets, Tim nearly secured a quadruple-double, posting 21 points, 20 rebounds, 10 assists, and 8 blocks. That performance remains one of the greatest in NBA Finals history and cemented Duncan's legacy as a big-game player. He wasn't an outspoken motivator or a fiery presence in the locker room. Instead, he led by example, earning the respect of his teammates through his relentless work ethic and unwavering commitment to winning. While many superstars crave the limelight, Duncan actively avoided it, choosing to let his play do the talking. Teammates often described him as approachable, selfless, and the ultimate professional. Coach Greg Popovich, who shared a lifelong bond with Duncan, often said, "There was no Time Duncan without the Spurs, but there were no Spurs without Tim Duncan." Their partnership became one of the most successful in sports history, with Popovich tailoring the team's culture around his unassuming yet competitive nature. And at 38 years old, Tim was far from his athletic prime, yet he remained an integral part of the Spurs' machine-like system. That season, the Spurs played some of the most beautiful basketball the NBA has ever seen, dismantling the defending champion Miami Heat in the finals. It was a fitting culmination of years of hard work and selflessness, with Duncan proving that greatness isn't always about individual accolades, but about elevating everyone around you. Throughout his career, Duncan's demeanor remained consistent. He never allowed himself to get caught up in chasing personal milestones or engaging in rivalries. His focus was always singular: winning. Tim retired as one of only 3 players in NBA history with over 26,000 points, 15,000 rebounds, and 3,000 blocks, joining the rarefied era of legends like Kareem and Wilt Chamberlain. And to this day, Tim Duncan remains the embodiment of greatness, the ultimate cornerstone of one of the most successful eras in NBA history. Hakeem Olajuwon, the ultimate challenger. Hakeem and Robinson joined the NBA just a few years apart and were forever linked as 2 of the most dominant centers of their generation. Hakeem, famously nicknamed the Dream, became known for his spellbinding footwork and finesse in the post, while Robinson relied on his combinations of athletic strength and explosiveness. On the surface, they seemed so different, but when it came to competitiveness and work ethic, they were mirror images. Robinson never hesitated to acknowledge Hakeem as one of the greatest adversaries of his career, frequently recalling how their battles on the court pushed him to be the best version of himself. His journey into basketball wasn't ordinary. Born in Lagos, Nigeria, he didn't discover the sport until he was a teenager. Soccer was his first love, and he credited the fast footwork he honed as a goalkeeper for his iconic moves later on the hardwood. Though an NCAA title eluded him, Hakeem's ability to dominate both ends of the court made him the clear choice as the first overall pick in the 1984 NBA draft, ahead of even Michael Jordan. And by the time Robinson entered the league in 1989, after fulfilling his service with the U.S. Navy, Hakeem had already established himself as one of the most skilled big men in the game. Yet Robinson was no stranger to the spotlight. The Admiral's unique blend of elite athleticism and disciplined approach set him apart, and it wasn't long before these 2 behemoths faced off in high-stakes matchups. Among their numerous clashes, the 1995 Western Conference Finals stands out as the most iconic, not just for its significance, but for his absolutely masterful performance. Robinson had just been crowned the regular season MVP and entered the series as the league's most dominant player. But Hakeem took it personally, creating one of the most haunting memories of his stellar career. Night after night, Hakeem showcased why he was called the Dream, humiliating even the league's best defender with an array of dazzling moves: dream shakes, turnaround jumpers, hooks, and fakes that seemed impossible to guard. Robinson later admitted that it was like facing a magician who could pull out any trick he wanted at any moment. Hakeem was phenomenal. He had moves that nobody in the league could stop, Robinson once said in an interview, reflecting on a series that saw Hakeem average an incredible 35.3 points, alongside 12.5 rebounds and 5.0 assists per game. It wasn't just the physical skill that separated Hakeem during those games. It was his composure, his intelligence on the court, and his ability to stay one step ahead of any defender, no matter how elite they were. The Rockets would go on to sweep the Spurs in that series and eventually win their second consecutive NBA title, with Hakeem named Finals MVP yet again. And despite the bitter defeats Robinson suffered at Hakeem's hands, his admiration for his rival only grew. The series may have been lopsided on the scoreboard, but off the court, it was a different story. Both players shared a profound connection through their unwavering faith. Driven by their religious beliefs, they carried themselves with humility and respect, creating mutual admiration beyond the game. Robinson often pointed out that Hakeem was a model for what a center could be, calling him a player who redefined what a center could do. The two dominated the golden era of big men, where their names were mentioned in the same breath as Shaq and Patrick Ewing, yet it somehow always felt like Robinson and Hakeem shared a special rivalry, grounded in a deeper respect and understanding of what made the other truly remarkable. Their battles weren't just physical, but mental. Robinson's defensive instincts and sharp basketball IQ often forced Hakeem to dig deep into his bag of tricks. The mutual respect extended beyond their head-to-head matchups, especially as both men transitioned to different stages of their careers. Robinson's leadership during the Spurs' eventual 1999 championship run and Hakeem's legacy as a two-time champion stood as a testament to their relentless pursuit of greatness. He remains the only player in NBA history to record more than 3,000 career blocks and ranks as the all-time leader in that category. Time after time, Robinson would drive to the basket with his signature quickness, only to be met with Hakeem's perfect timing. And yet, even those rejections were followed by a mutual nod of respect, a silent acknowledgement of the greatness on both ends of the court. And what truly made their rivalry stand out was its purity. There was no animosity, no trash talk, no theatrics. Just two all-time greats, competing at the highest level with everything they had. They both set a standard for how professional athletes could elevate their craft while lifting each other up in the process. Whether it was Hakeem's dream shake or David's thunderous dunks, their matchups created some of the most unforgettable highlights in basketball history. Charles Barkley, the undeniable force. Known as Sir Charles, Barkley's charisma and larger-than-life personality made him an unforgettable figure in basketball history. He was a relentless competitor on the court and a natural entertainer off it. However, he did far more than just talk. He dominated. At only 6'6", Barkley broke every stereotype for what an undersized power forward could do. With 11 All-Star selections, an MVP title in 1993, and a spot on the NBA's top 50 and top 75 lists, Barkley was much more than his polarizing personality. He was an unstoppable force of nature. While his confidence sometimes garnered criticism, one player who always respected his fire was Robinson. Despite their vastly different personalities, Robinson admired Barkley for being the player who could push anyone to their limits with pure effort and skill. His journey to NBA stardom wasn't exactly smooth, and his early story made his rise to dominance even more remarkable. Born in Leeds, Alabama, and raised by a single mother, Barkley didn't enter high school basketball as a can't-miss prospect. In fact, he barely made his varsity squad until his senior year, when a sudden growth spurt transformed him from an overweight benchwarmer into a 6'4" powerhouse. Even then, his unconventional body type, short by basketball standards but heavily built, led many to doubt his potential. And yet, he thrived because of his determination and raw athleticism. At Auburn University, his unique combination of energy, rebounding, and offensive brilliance made him a household name. Despite his weight often hitting well above 250 pounds in college, Barkley could dominate the boards and run the fast break like a point guard. By the time the Philadelphia 76ers selected him as the 5th overall pick in the 1984 NBA draft, there was no question that Sir Charles was a unique talent. Barkley entered the league brimming with confidence and ready to take on anyone daring enough to stand in his way. His ability to crash the boards was legendary. He led the NBA in rebounds for multiple seasons, despite facing players like Robinson, Patrick Ewing, and Shaquille O'Neal, who all towered over him. For someone his size, to grab boards the way he did, he was the toughest 6'6" player you'll ever see, Robinson said. Barkley wasn't just a great rebounder. He was unstoppable in transition and had court vision that made him more than just a one-dimensional scorer, a versatility Robinson never took for granted. As Barkley's career progressed, his explosive athleticism and fiery personality made him one of the most popular yet polarizing figures in sports. His trash-talking and zero-nonsense approach to rivalries often painted him as the bad guy, but that only added to his appeal. In their head-to-head matchups, Barkley often found ways to frustrate the Admiral by pulling him away from the rim with mid-range jumpers or out-hustling him for offensive rebounds. But Robinson was quick to acknowledge the brilliance of those battles, saying, "He pushed me to be better. You couldn't take a night off against him. He wouldn't let you." And one of Barkley's defining traits was his ability to rise to the occasion under pressure, and Robinson witnessed this firsthand throughout their careers. In the 1993 Western Conference Finals, Barkley led the Suns to a showdown against David's Spurs, a series that showcased Charles at his peak. Barkley averaged 25 points, 12 rebounds, and 5 assists during the series, often dominating in clutch moments, including a legendary game-winning shot in Game 6 to send the Suns to the NBA Finals. And that game winner cemented his reputation as someone you simply couldn't afford to leave open in critical moments. Together, their battles served as a reminder of what the NBA was all about: competition, respect, and an enduring love for the game. Each of these players holds a unique place in David Robinson's journey. Whether as teammates, rivals, or inspirations, they all contributed to the Admiral's illustrious career, teaching lessons of teamwork and respect that defined him both as a player and a person. All right, that's all for today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.